Is porn addiction real? I'm Dr. Trish Leigh, and I'm here to tell you that unfortunately, yes, it is. If someone has told you the opposite, that's fake news. Let me tell you why. Okay, so in the International Classification of Diseases, the 11th edition, a few years back, compulsive hypersexuality was added as a disease. And the number one way that that is acted out by a person is in pornography consumption. We know that from the science. So basically, what happens is when you consistently and frequently consume pornography, it creates hypersexuality, the need to go back for more. And we know from a neuroscience perspective that it goes back to brain activity and brain performance patterns. So, what's at the crux of a pornography addiction is that when you first consume pornography, and for so many people, it's at a young age, this is what happens, and there's science to support it, that especially for a young brain, the reward system in the brain, in the limbic system, an old area of the brain historically, is hijacked by this supernormal stimulus that creates a flood of neurochemicals into the brain of a young person, usually boys, but that's changing. So what happens is in this young boy's brain, usually it's their friend or older brother or somebody shows them pornography, and then they get this massive neurochemical release, and immediately the brain will try to calibrate itself to even off those levels to get the brain and body back to homeostasis. In doing so, the next time the young man goes back to watch pornography again, because of this rush of neurochemicals, the brain actually needs more because it's already adjusted itself to need more of the same to be able to get the same type of feeling that it did in the first time. That is how quickly pornography can hijack a brain. That is proven by science. So now going back to the young brain, we know that when this happens, the reward circuitry and the motivational circuitry in the midbrain is hijacked and it's flooded with these neurochemicals, which then, after consistent and frequent consumption, starts to burn out those areas of the brain, making it so you need more frequency, more consistency, more intensity, more of the same stimulus to get the same response. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex in the front of the brain, which is the control center of the brain, it houses executive function skills like planning and organization, impulse control, judgment, decision making. That area of the brain is weakened, and underactivity begins to happen. So now the brakes in the brain are off. It's like a freight train running wild with no brakes. If you've seen that in the movies, you know how that ends, which is why I am here. It doesn't end well for the people on the train, namely you, if you have been consuming pornography. What happens is we know from the science that then your prefrontal cortex is underdeveloped from the age that you started watching pornography. Your brain hasn't developed like it should. So when the prefrontal cortex develops, what happens is you get good judgment skills. You get motivated towards planning and creating your life. You are able to resist impulses, and then when you resist impulses, you stay away from compulsions. So that is what prevents you from addiction, because that control center in your brain is strong. If you watch pornography, it's weak. It can't make those decisions and it can't give you that control. That's why I say control your brain or it will control you, because if you've been watching pornography, it is controlling you. And the way out is not more of the same. The way out is you need to use neuroscience and technology and strategies built on neuroscience to back out the brain pattern that got you there on session number 1 and has been perpetuating it ever since. So yes, pornography addiction is real and true. What we also know from the science is that it is hijacked your brain so that the activity in your brain is not the same as a healthy person's activity, that you are much more susceptible for going back because the explicit material is giving your brain a much bigger rush than a healthy brain. So it becomes this self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating cycle. At the same time, we know that large dopamine release and oxytocin, which is the neurochemical of bonding, literally your brain becomes bonded to a screen. There's norepinephrine and serotonin. This Molotov cocktail keeps you going back for more because it creates seemingly pleasure and pain avoidance during your pornography consumption sessions. Now check this out. Guess what it does though? Then when you try to go back to your real life and you don't have those high levels of dopamine, you can no longer exist in the world. You can no longer engage with the world. And many people will find themselves going back for more and more and more frequently and more consistently because the world doesn't bring any pleasure, any happiness. And it actually becomes uncomfortable for many people because they don't have this large dopamine dump when they're in the real world. Terrible. I do not want that for you. At the same time, the science shows that cortisol production, which is the stress neurotransmitter, is when it's high because now you're more stressed out in your life. It is not dampened like the way it would be in a healthy brain. So what I mean by that is, if me and you are living the same life and something stressful happens, I'm able to have a stress response, but then it dampens and I'm able to handle that situation in my life. You have the stress response and your brain doesn't dampen the stress response. So now your life becomes triply more stressful than mine because your stress response is always on and it's not dampening. That is proven by science. So if you find that you have a pornography habit, and we don't need to call it an addiction if we don't want to, but you have a pornography habit and it's making you go back for more and more and more, a compulsion, an addiction, and you don't even like it. And when you get done watching, you're like, why did I just watch that again? And then you try to go back to your life and you're miserable and you have feelings of emptiness, you have depression, you have more anxiety, you have physical problems like erectile dysfunction or delayed ejaculation or libido that's all off when you're trying to be with another human being, then you need help. You need to back this brain pattern out. Okay, so what do you do about it? It's a 3-step process and I've made hundreds of videos on it. Number 1, you need to unwire your brain, break the habit. You need to stop watching now. And it's not going to be easy. You're going to need help. And that's why I'm here for you. You can check out my services at drtrishleigh.com. Number 2, you need to rewire your brain in the right direction using brain training with technology and neuroscience. And then you have to reboot everything in your life. And actually, it doesn't have to be everything massively. It has to be everything subtly for the better. When you get done with this, you'll be able to squeeze lemonade out of lemons. You'll have a better life than you have now because you'll break the habit. You'll find joy in your real life. You'll no longer feel yucky when you're just living. You'll feel great. You'll feel inspired. You'll feel empowered. You'll be back to business, rocking out your full potential. So you have to get on purpose, change your behaviors, change your attitudes, change your thought processes, figure out your emotions, tap into them. They will not kill you. Feel what you need to feel, release the pain, create a life of joy. It will create dopamine and serotonin in your brain and it'll start rewiring you in the right direction. Then when you keep doing that, it will hardwire in the new, better brain pattern, and the one that you had before that was bringing you back for more and more will unwire itself and you will ride off into the sunset. That is my goal for you. So do not kid yourself that this is not an addiction. If you keep going back for more and you don't want to, then it's time for change. Science proves this is real. I'm just the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. Just know that it is real. Okay, control your brain or it'll control you.